language by doing a little experiment. So, ready? I want you to listen very carefully and then repeat after me. Are you ready? Mundify the epigastrium. Again? Again? Perfect. What does it mean? It doesn't have to mean anything. In fact, it was what my mother's lawyer used to say when he came over around supper time and he wanted a drink. He said, I think it's time to mundify the epigastrium. Meaning to soothe the lining of his stomach. I don't know why he thought bourbon on the rocks would do that, but that's what he said, and I remember that from childhood. And I remembered it perfectly, long before I knew even what anybody meant by it. And the reason is, of course, that it's made up of phonemes. So now we're going to do the second test. Are you ready? Again, repeat after me. Again? You can't do it. Now, it's not that your ears suddenly went bad, or that I spoke softly. It's that you did not have norms of correction for those sounds. You didn't have the automatic norms of correction that let you involuntarily categorize all those sounds as particular letters. If you had them, then you would get it just as clearly as mundify the epigastrium, and you'd be able to repeat it. The amazing thing about language, and people all the time when they talk about language, they're always very impressed with the fact that we can understand it. And of course that's true, and it's very important. What's really important about language, though, is that we can transmit it even when we don't understand it. In fact, it's the digitization of language that permits us to divide labor and use verbal and other formulae without having complete understanding of them. Norms of correction. Oh, I'm going to give you another little example of this. E equals mc squared. How many of you believe that? Come on. How many of you understand it? Yeah. I'll tell you, I used this example once in a talk at Fermilab to an audience of 250 of the world's best physicists and engineers. And so I said, how many of you believe it? And they all hands went up. How many of you understand it? All the hands went up. And I was saying, well, this isn't really the right audience for this example. And a fellow stood up, he said, no, it's the right audience. The experimentalists only think they understand it. We theoreticians are the ones that really understand. And he was right, I think. And it was a beautiful illustration of the point. We have this division of labor where we can do the believing, that is, we can have a pretty good idea of what something means, and we've got a formula to cling to, a memorable, unforgettable formula to cling to. We can even use it, and we leave the understanding to other people in another discipline. This is one of the keys to our success. But it's been around for a long time. Information about kayaks is stored in Inuit brains, of course, but it's also stored in kayaks. But only on the presumption that the design is good. We have correction of the norm here, too. I've been using this example for some time, and then Peter Godfrey Smith showed me a beautiful quote, which I'm going to pass on to you. Not about Inuit kayaks, but about Polynesian canoes. Every boat is copied from another boat. It is the sea herself who fashions the boats, choosing those which function and destroying the others. If the boat makes it back to shore, it's a good boat. Copy it. You don't have to know why it's a good boat. You don't have to understand the principles of why it's a good boat. It's here, it's good. So here we have cultural selection, natural selection, working on something which is an artifact, for heaven's sakes. This is natural selection, but not of genes. Now, if I had time, I would argue that memes are like software viruses. In fact, I would argue that they are, in an important sense, software viruses. But to understand this, you need to adjust your imagination about both computation and software, and that's another lecture for another time. So I'll just pass over that, and then remind you that here we had the traditional inherited treasures model, and I want to compare it with the mimetic Darwinian model, according to which culture is composed of good, bad, and indifferent things, created by processes with variable insight, sometimes a great deal, sometimes none at all, and adopted with variable recognition of value. Sometimes people pass on things they positively dislike, they positively hate, they despise, but they can't keep from copying them. Like that terrible jingle that you can't get out of your head, and you hum it, and then your friend picks it up and is angry at you for passing it on. Notice that the economic model, that the traditional model, is a limiting case of the mimetic model. It's not ruled out, it's just up in one little corner of the space. So let's compare them. On the traditional model, you have good things. The Darwinian says, well, there's good things, but also bad things and so-so things. They depend on genius in the traditional model. No, sometimes genius, but as often as not just dumb luck that they get created. Traditional says these are things that are valued. Well, no, a lot of times they're not valued, sometimes they are. In both cases, these items are passed on. That's how we get cultural transmission. The traditional view says with improvements, the Darwinian view says, well, with mutations, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them not so, just as it like drift. So the traditional view is an economic model, and the Darwinian has the economic model as a limiting case. Just one of many possible models. This is my olive branch to the social sciences and so forth, and to the humanities, to say, look, your traditional model is not thrown out, it's just put in one corner of a larger space, and explained. Now, once we have cultural software installed, we're ready for a momentous step, because this creates, for the first time, patterns of top-down causation of a non-mysterious sort. Now, the book that I think is best at articulating this is the most recent book, or one of the most recent books by my friend and colleague Doug Hofstadter, called I Am a Strange Loop, where he shows that minds, human minds, can be dominated or driven by memes, or by an idea, or by one idea, or by ideas, and that this is a process that you need to have the memes to make sense of, and it creates a whole new way for things to be done in the head. And this is the fulcrum, if you like, of intelligent design. Now, we're ready. What's the difference between the termite castle and Gaudi's wonderful church? And the answer is, the termite castle is designed and built by a process where there's no top-down intelligent design, there's no blueprint, there's no plan in advance. The individual termites are each just doing their little mindless job. They are competent at what they do, but they don't have to understand. There's nobody there that understands the larger project. That is bottom-up design and construction, and it has evolved by natural selection. In the case of Gaudi, Gaudi evolved by natural selection, same as you and me. He was not a skyhook, he was not a gift from the gods, he was a brilliant person. But he was in charge.